welcome to the ITOM Insights podcast series. I'm Wes Heaps, Product Marketing Manager for Universal Discovery and Universal CMDB. In this issue, we're going to explore what getting clever with Universal Discovery can benefit your organization with a robust discovery and configuration management solution. With me today, we have two Universal Discovery experts, Bill Dyck, Product Manager for Universal Discovery, and Pulin Brahmbhatt, Enterprise Service Management Practice Manager. So just before we kind of kick this off, we need to explore why, getting clever with Universal Discovery is a smart new move, but we need to also understand what Universal Discovery is and how does it work. So can someone answer that? Help us out here?
Yeah, this is Bill. So Universal Discovery is the name of a tool that we have that essentially it's an automated discovery tool. It can go browse your networks and with the right type of credentials can start modeling the data that represents the servers and the software on those servers and the connections between those servers, and can bring that all into a single location, what we call a CMDB. And from that CMDB, you can then have a whole bunch of features that you can use. We can discover content using an agent by deploying an agent out to an operating system someplace, whether it's virtual or physical or on the cloud or containers. We can also use agentless, which means we just talk to the device through a credential that we have. And then there's a third form, which is essentially just talking to like the management platform via an API. So the VMware platform or any of the cloud platforms, we can talk to the cloud platform itself and harvest what it knows about all of the VMs and software that it has deployed.
Okay, so you did mention a configuration management database or CMDB there. But why would someone want to use that? What are these kinds of benefits of using a universal discovery solution and a universal CMDB? Or in other words, why is it clever to use universal discovery?
That's a great question. I'll take that, Wes. This is Pulin. I actually use the CLEVER acronym to remind myself of the top 5 benefits of universal discovery. The CL in CLEVER stands for cloud transformation, so you can leverage discovery for your cloud transformation initiatives. The E stands for enterprise service management and how UD can help augment processes like change management, incident management through impact analysis, and providing accurate data for these processes. The V stands for vulnerability detection. Big use case from a SecOps standpoint. Knowing what you have is extremely important, and UD plays a key role with vulnerability detection. The E in the CLEVER acronym stands for endpoints and client discovery, especially with the work from home shift. UD has the ability to provide the visibility into the assets that your consumers are using, and more importantly, how it's configured, what software is running on these endpoints. And then last but not the least, R stands for risk and compliance. So we help discover the software assets, whether they're running on an endpoint or if it's in your data center. We provide exactly what software is installed, including the titles, the vendors, the versioning information. So it really helps you understand, get a complete landscape of the software that's deployed out there, and it's very beneficial from a risk and compliance standpoint. So that, in a nutshell, is clever, Wes, and these are also the top 5 benefits of using UD.
I like that. Clever. So everyone remember that. CLEVER. Jumping kind of right into that clever acronym there that we had. How would Universal Discovery help with someone going through a cloud transformation? Help me understand that.
Yes, Wes. Many organizations are adopting cloud as well as containers as a strategy to get better agility, flexibility, and value from a business standpoint. And so what we've done with UD is we've invested heavily on that front, where we provide end-to-end visibility for all of the major cloud vendors, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, also VMware's private cloud deployments. And then on top of that, we can also discover the topologies, the relationships for containerized applications. So whether you have vanilla Docker applications, or if your deployments use Kubernetes, we can provide visibility into these deployments. Now, it's extremely important from a transformation standpoint because we provide not just the assets, but also the interdependencies between these assets, right? And then, as I mentioned before, we also provide the ability to see what software has been deployed, and that directly correlates with your ability to manage costs and compliance in these environments, whether it's cloud or microservices on-premise or microservices deployed in the cloud environment, right? And then taking that a step further, we've invested in the technology to detect different resources, cloud resources, through the tagging, right? So tagging is big in the cloud domain. Whenever resources are deployed in the cloud, the developers or architects will associate some tags with these resources. So we can leverage these tags and make sense of the resources that are being discovered. So when you look at it dynamically, you can picture a view of a service or an application based on the tag filtering that you can throw in. And then last but not the least, a big benefit of this is your deployments can now be aligned with your company and industry standards and policies because you have the end-to-end visibility that UD provides. So very important from a cloud transformation and management perspective, Wes.
Right. So that was the CL in the Clever. So moving on to the E, which stands for Enterprise Service Management and kind of supporting change and incident management. Bill, before we just jump into that, Pulin did mention something there, and I think it also would apply to Enterprise Service Management, but he talked about dependencies, app dependencies. Can you kind of help us understand what those kind of dependencies are and how that helps with change management?
Yeah, you bet. And this is important for enterprise service management because one of the big things that when I was in HBIT that we got measured on is when we implemented a change, did we cause unplanned downtime? That was like the worst possible thing that you can do. And unplanned downtime, one of the primary reasons for that was that people made changes not fully understanding the context of how all of the equipment they were changing actually was used by people and users in your environment or your customers. And so Universal Discovery has the ability to collect these interdependencies, as Pulin mentioned, that describe all of the connections, all of the fabric inside of your IT infrastructure so that you know that like a database may be providing data to your application. And so if you take that database down, and you don't have visibility to that interdependency to your application, you're going to cause that unplanned downtime to your application. And so with Universal Discovery being able to identify all the servers and the software running on the servers, as well as their interdependencies between systems, especially in shared environments where you have storage or networks or databases that are shared amongst many different applications, having visibility to that, you can do something that we call impact analysis in enterprise service management through the data that Universal Discovery has captured so that you can predict before the change happens where the impacts are going to be. And then once you have that prediction, you can then communicate to the application owners so that they know their applications are becoming available. And if you're running services that your customers use directly, you can communicate to them to tell them that, hey, your banking application is going to be unavailable for 2 hours Saturday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so they're familiar and ready for it. And if something happens during that time, you know, you've explained it to the customers. They're not looking at you like you've failed. They're looking at you like, oh, that's just the normal downtime. It'll be up in 2 hours, and away you go. So it helps making sure that when you do make a change, that the change is planned. It doesn't cause unnecessary disruptions, and you have a better communication plan with your application owners and the customers who actually use those services.
Okay, yeah, and that sounds much more robust than, say, just like a simple connection map, like this database is connected to this server, but you're talking about something a little more robust on that kind of dependency, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like the database servers these days have thousands or hundreds of databases in them. And so these databases, so it's one server with maybe a really big server that has Oracle on it, and that Oracle has tons of schemas, and all those schemas are actually presenting information to a collection of applications. And so if you bring that whole database down, you could impact 100 applications. And so Universal Discovery actually can trace the communication paths between each of those schemas to the application that uses those schemas. So you'll have a map that gives you visibility to all that stuff in detail.
Great. Well, that covered the CL and the E. So moving on to the V, and Pulin, I think you did mention this, vulnerability detection, and how does that relate to SecOps? What role is Universal Discovery going to play in that?
Yes, Wes, again, a very important use case from a discovery standpoint. We all know ransomware is a big issue for a lot of companies. Just in the US, we've heard about companies losing millions of dollars because of unaddressed vulnerabilities and ransomware, right? So this is a very important use case from a configuration management standpoint. And it goes back to what I talked about before, UD's ability to discover software, not just in cloud or containers, also with your legacy architectures, right? We can detect the software, the version of the software that you're running. So if there is a vulnerability, you can now go back into your single source of truth and see where these titles are installed, right?
Okay.
And the benefit then is, yeah.
Let me just interrupt you there. So for example, I mean, most people who are listening to this probably heard about, Log4j. Could Universal Discovery help someone with that?
Absolutely. In fact, we just released a package which would help discover Log4j. That's a really good example, Wes. I'm glad you mentioned that. Even vulnerabilities like SolarWinds, for example, right? So if you are aware of something that is requiring some attention, we provide a Google-like interface where you can just type in the name of the software you're looking for, and then we will tell you exactly where Log4j or where SolarWinds is running within your organization.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. And then to add to that, Wes, we also have the ability to tell you the end of support dates for common vendors. And then the software recognition that I mentioned before happens through the software library that we provide, which is updated on a monthly basis, which is where we updated the package for Log4j identification. And a lot of our customers are using that to see exactly where the Log4j instances are running. Now, I do want to talk about one more thing, which is an extension of the portfolio, the ESM portfolio, and that is the ability to patch these vulnerabilities. So UD can help you detect these vulnerabilities, but we also have the ability in our portfolio to help you drive a service level, objective-driven patching and compliance scan, plus remediation. It also offers you real-time vulnerability and risk compliance dashboard. So we can talk about that offline if anybody's interested. Reach out to us. We can dive into it. But I wanted to throw that in as a augmenting feature of the Micro Focus ESM portfolio.
Wes? Yeah. So you did just mention that the last letter R for risk and compliance. So what role would Universal Discovery kind of play in both that endpoint, client discovery, which is where that E before the R comes from, and like software asset management? How is it going to help there?
Yeah. So all of it is just in managing the risk, and you do that across all the different platforms. So endpoints and clients, these are different than servers because their availability to the scanning technology with any software like ours is limited simply because it's not on the company network. And so Universal Discovery has multiple methods to actually be able to detect those systems, whereas our competitors may have only one. So Universal Discovery has the ability to do clientless or agentless, just like our competitors, but we can also deploy an agent. And we've been doing this for decades. And so our agent capabilities are second to none. We cover just so many versions of operating systems and platforms and combinations of all of them. And then we have abilities to be able to have the agent report back in when devices are only connected for short periods of time, which would be typical with the desktop that's at home or a laptop that's at home. And also works inside of a data center or especially in a cloud environment. And so you can have the agent can be set up so that it watches for when connectivity appears, and as soon as it does, then it sends the data that it's been collecting to the centralized location. And so then that's the endpoint and client side of that. And then the risk management, that's where you actually start using the data that you've discovered. And so it's understanding what Pulin mentioned just about the software that's installed on the systems. And so this software all has version numbers, and so Universal Discovery will actually understand what's installed and the version, so you can use it to manage risk, or at least be aware of risks, and then hand that data off to other tools. And then from the software asset management perspective, which is really the combination of vendor management and software utilization. So Universal Discovery can provide you one half of that data, the actual software that's been installed. So you will know accurately how many people in your environment have installed Microsoft Office Pro. You'll know how many people have installed Exchange or these different applications and the versions of them. So once you have that data, the software asset management process allows you to compare that data against the contracts that you might have for those vendors. So for Microsoft, do you have a site installation license that allows you to install as many as you want, or do you have the ability to install 1,000 licenses? If you have the 1,000 license limit, and you find out that you've installed it actually on 1,200 systems, you know that you need to either renegotiate with Microsoft or you need to get that software off of 200 systems, either direction. And if on the other side of it is you may have 1,000 license limit and only have to install 800, and you'll never have more than 800 at any one time. And so then you can go back to Microsoft and say, we gave you too much. We want to cut back on our contract and only have our max be 800. So software asset management, along with the data that Universal Discovery provides, lets you have visibility both to the overspend situation where you have spent more on your contract than you actually are using, and the underspend, which is an audit risk, where you have installed more software than you have actually then the contract says that you can install. So if you don't get that fixed quickly, you can be at risk for paying audit penalties in a future audit from that particular vendor.
Okay, I just want to follow up on some things, and maybe we have a solution here, maybe we don't. But you mentioned software, and I think Pulin mentioned that there was a large software library and it was getting monthly updates. But there are a lot of people who are developing their own software. So would it be possible for us or someone using Universal Discovery to somehow discover some homegrown software if for some reason it's not done?
Yeah, so our monthly updates are actually giving you the software recognition capabilities of over-the-counter software, right? The stuff that you would buy or have a contract of, or maybe open source software that's out there. But additionally, many companies write their own software. You have the ability through various tools that Universal Discovery provides to be able to add recognition of your homegrown software into the process so that you can actually understand what you have in its entirety, both over the counter as well as homegrown. And we even offer a service at no charge that if you have a lot of this data and you don't want to be spending that time yourself, you can send that data to us, the scan files. It's all anonymized, and we will do that recognition for you and then send you back the files that allow you to be able to add that recognition to your normal scanning process.
Okay, well, that does sound like something that, a lot of people might find useful. We're trying to keep these podcasts short, so we're going to I'm going to cut you off there. I know you could probably talk all day, but I just want to remind everyone that we talked about why it's clever to use universal discovery. And that clever acronym that we're using stands for Cloud Transformation, Enterprise Service Management, supporting that kind of change in incident management. The V in clever is for vulnerability detection. And then, of course, we have the E for endpoints and client discovery, and then controlling your risk and compliance, especially around software asset management. So thank you, everyone, for listening to today's podcast, and look forward for the next one in this ITOM series. Thank you all.